The vast darkness of space stretched before Captain Dae-ho Kim as he stood on the bridge of the Earth exploration vessel Horizon. His dark eyes remained fixed on the main screen where something impossible was happening. After 30 years of deep space travel, humans had finally found what they had been searching for. "Are we recording this?" Dae-ho asked, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Yes, Captain. All systems are capturing data," replied Communications Officer Hanbin, his fingers moving quickly across his console. On the screen, 3 ships unlike anything humans had built, moved with strange grace. They seemed to flow through space rather than push against it. Their surfaces shimmered with a blue-green light that reminded Dae-ho of the ocean beaches from his homeland. "They're sending another message," Hanbin said. "Audio and visual this time." Dae-ho straightened his uniform, put it on screen. The image of the alien ships disappeared, replaced by a face that was almost human but not quite. The being had skin that changed colors slightly as it moved, like oil on water. Its eyes were large, with pupils shaped like diamonds. "Greetings, Earth vessel," the alien said in nearly perfect English. "I am Supreme Commander Nari of the Miran Fleet. We welcome you to this sector of space." Dae-ho took a deep breath. The words he was about to speak would be remembered in human history forever. "I am Captain Dae-ho Kim of the Earth Exploration, Vessel Horizon. On behalf of all humans, we are honored to meet you." Nari's lips curved into what seemed like a smile. "We have been watching your approach for some time. We would like to invite a small group from your ship to visit us, to begin what we hope will be a long friendship between our peoples." Dae-ho looked at his second-in-command, a woman named Mija, who gave a small nod. "We would be happy to accept your invitation," Dae-ho said. "Please allow us time to prepare a delegation." "Of course," Nari replied. "We will send coordinates for docking in 1 Earth hour." After the screen went dark, the bridge erupted in excited voices. Dae-ho raised his hand for quiet. "This is the moment we've trained for," he said. "I will lead the delegation. I want Dr. Ji-woo Park as our science representative and Tae-yang Lee for cultural exchange." Ji-woo was the ship's lead xenobiologist, a woman who had spent her career studying the possibility of alien life. Tae-yang was their cultural specialist, trained to understand and interpret new societies. 2 hours later, the 3 humans stood in the docking bay of the largest Miran ship. Dae-ho tried not to stare at their hosts. There were 5 Mirans waiting for them, all dressed in flowing clothes that seemed to be made of living material. "Welcome," said Nari, stepping forward. "Please follow me to our meeting chamber." Bidi. They walked through the curved hallways of the alien ship. Dae-ho noticed something strange. Each of the high-ranking Mirans was followed by another creature. These beings moved like liquid, sometimes walking on 2 legs, sometimes flowing along the floor. They were dark gray with hints of blue, and their eyes glowed with a soft light. In the meeting chamber, the humans sat across from the Mirans at a low table. The strange creatures took positions behind their Miran companions. Dae-ho watched as one of the creatures stretched forward, extending what looked like a long tongue, and licked the hand of its Miran. "You are curious about our shadows," Nari said, noticing Dae-ho's gaze. "Yes," Ji-woo answered before Dae-ho could speak. Her eyes were wide with scientific interest. "We have never seen beings like them." Nari made a sound like soft laughter. "They are our greatest achievement. We created them from simple life forms we found on a moon in our home system. Over many generations, we shaped them into what you see now." "Created them?" Ji-woo asked, leaning forward. "Yes. We changed their basic structure, their very code of life. They are intelligent enough to understand complex commands, but loyal enough to never question them." Nari reached back to stroke the head of the shadow behind her. The creature closed its glowing eyes. "In what looked like pleasure, they serve you," Tae-yang said, making notes on his tablet. "They do everything for us," another Miran added. "They can change their shape to be useful for any task. They help us build. They fight for us if needed. They even help raise our young." Ji-woo watched the shadows closely. She noticed how they moved, how they reacted to their master's words. Something about their eyes bothered her. There seemed to be something there, something looking out, something thinking. The meeting continued for several hours. The Morans described their society, their worlds, and their technology. They showed interest in Earth and asked many questions about human history and development. As the humans prepared to return to their ship, Nari made an offer. "We believe our peoples could learn much from each other," she said. "We propose an exchange of information and perhaps later, an exchange of people. Scientists, artists, leaders." "That would be wonderful," Deho said. "But I must consult with my government first." "Of course," Nari said. "We will remain here while you make contact with your home. Take the time you need." Back on the horizon, Deho sent a message to Earth, knowing it would take several days to reach home and receive a reply. While they waited, Jiwoo asked permission to review the recordings they had made of the shadows. "Something doesn't seem right," she told Deho in his private office. "The way Nari described them, as creations, as tools. But I saw intelligence in their eyes, Captain." "What are you suggesting?" Deho asked. "I'm not sure yet," Jiwoo admitted. "But I don't think those creatures are just servants. The way they watch, the way they seem to understand everything. I think there's more to them than the Morans are telling us." Deho frowned. "Keep studying the recordings, but be careful with your theories. We can't risk offending the first alien species we've ever met based on a feeling." Jiwoo nodded, but as she left the captain's office, she couldn't shake the image of those glowing eyes, watching from behind their masters. Eyes that seemed to say, "Help us." 6 days later, Earth's reply came. They were authorized to begin formal relations with the Morans. A larger delegation would be sent from Earth, but it would take months to arrive. Until then, Deho and his crew would represent humanity. What none of them knew was that the Morans had their own plans. Plans that would change the fate of both species forever. And at the center of those plans were the quiet, watching shadows. Creatures with far more awareness than their masters wanted to admit. 6 months had passed since the first meeting with the Morans. The initial excitement had settled into a steady routine of diplomatic meetings and information exchanges. Earth's government had sent additional personnel to the horizon, including more scientists, diplomats, and security officers. Dr. Jiwoo Park sat in her laboratory, reviewing data from her latest tests. The door slid open and Dr. Sun Ho Kang entered carrying a tablet. "Have you seen the latest proposal?" Sun Ho asked, his face showing concern. Sun Ho was a genetic specialist sent from Earth's Science Academy to study the Myran's advanced biological knowledge. "Not yet," Jiwoo replied, looking up from her work. "What does it say?" "The Morans have invited a team of human scientists to visit their homeworld," Sun Ho explained. "They're offering to share their propulsion technology in exchange for our terraforming methods." Jiwoo's eyes widened. Moran ships could travel 3 times faster than Earth vessels. Such technology would open the galaxy to human exploration. "That's a big step," she said. "Who would go?" Sun Ho handed her the tablet. "You're listed as the team leader." 3 weeks later, Jiwoo led a group of 5 human scientists aboard a Moran transport vessel. Captain Deho had wanted to use a human ship, but the journey to the Moran homeworld would take years with Earth technology. The Moran ship could make the trip in just under 2 months. "Are you nervous?" Sun Ho asked as they settled into their quarters on the alien ship. "A little," Jiwoo admitted, "but mostly excited. We're going to be the first humans to see another species' homeworld." The journey was uneventful. The Morans were polite hosts, though they kept certain areas of the ship off limits to the humans. Jiwoo noticed that the shadows seemed more numerous on this vessel, performing all manner of tasks from maintenance to food preparation. She still couldn't shake her unease about these creatures. When no Morans were watching, she would try to make eye contact with the shadows. Sometimes she thought she saw recognition in their glowing eyes, but they always quickly looked away. The Moran homeworld, called Luria, was a beautiful planet with 3 small moons. From orbit, its oceans appeared purple, and its land masses were covered in structures that seemed to grow from the ground rather than being built upon it. "Welcome to our home," said Yunji, their Miran guide. Unlike Nari, Yunji was a scientist, not a military leader. "We have prepared a research facility for your team. You will have access to our databases and laboratories." The humans were given a building near one of the planet's smaller cities. It was comfortable and equipped with most of what they needed for their work. Each day they would meet with Miran scientists to exchange information. The humans shared their knowledge of sustainable terraforming, while the Mirans explained the basics of their faster-than-light travel technology. But as the weeks passed, Jiwoo became increasingly troubled by what she observed about Miran society. The relationship between the Mirans and their shadows seemed more complex than they had been told. One evening, she witnessed a Miran scientist scolding a shadow that had dropped a container. The Miran's voice was cold, and the shadow cowered in what could only be described as fear. Later that night, Jiwoo discussed her concerns with Sunho in their private quarters, where they believed they couldn't be overheard. "I think the shadows are being mistreated," she said quietly. "They're treated like animals or worse." Sunho nodded. "I've seen it too. And there's something else." He lowered his voice even further. "I've been secretly scanning them when I can. Their neural complexity is amazing, Jiwoo. It rivals or even exceeds that of the Mirans themselves." Jiwoo's breath caught. "You mean they're fully intelligent? Sentient?" "I believe so," Sunho said. "But they've been modified genetically to ensure compliance. Their brain chemistry forces them to obey. It's not natural submission, it's biological slavery." The next day, Jiwoo carefully brought up the subject with Eunji as they worked together in the main laboratory. "The shadows seem very capable," Jiwoo said casually. "How did you develop them to this level?" Eunji looked up from her work. "It took many generations of careful modification. They were a primitive species when we found them. Wild, violent, with only basic intelligence. We elevated them, gave them purpose. They seem quite intelligent now," Jiwoo pressed. "Yes, they are," Eunji agreed. "Intelligent enough to be useful, but not so intelligent that they question their purpose." Jiwoo hesitated, then asked, "Do they have any rights in your society?" Eunji's color shifted slightly, a sign of confusion or perhaps irritation. "Rights? They are not citizens, Dr. Park. They are tools, creations. Do your Earth animals have rights?" "Some do," Jiwoo said. "We have laws against cruelty to animals, and we don't modify sentient beings to serve us." "A cultural difference then," Eunji said dismissively. "They were a primitive species before we elevated them. Their purpose is to serve. Is it not the same with your Earth animals?" "No," Sunho said, joining the conversation. "We don't enslave sentient beings." Eunji's colors darkened. A sign Jiwoo had learned indicated displeasure. "This discussion is unproductive. Let us return to our work." That evening, Jiwoo sent an encrypted message back to the Horizon, sharing her and Sunho's concerns about the shadows. She also mentioned that while the Mirans were sharing some technology, they seemed to be much more interested in human genetic research than in terraforming techniques. What neither Jiwoo nor any of the humans knew was that back on Earth, a secret project was underway. Named Project Guardian, it was humanity's response to the unsettling aspects of their new alien allies. Earth's defense leaders had been suspicious of the Mirans' quick friendship. They had authorized the development of biological constructs designed specifically for space combat and planetary defense. Unlike the Mirans, however, human scientists insisted on creating beings with limited consciousness, more like advanced biological machines than thinking creatures. The lead scientist on Project Guardian, Dr. Min-jae Choi, had been clear from the start. "We will not create slaves. Our guardians will be sophisticated tools, not sentient beings forced to serve." As Jiwoo and her team continued their work on Luria, unaware of Project Guardian, they began to notice other troubling signs. Shadows were taken away when they showed any signs of independent thinking. Miran's security around the human quarters increased, and Eunji began asking very specific questions about human genetic manipulation techniques. "We should prepare to leave," Jiwoo told her team after 3 months on the Miran world. "I think we've learned what we came to learn. and I don't like the direction this exchange is taking. But before they could request transport back to the waiting horizon, a message arrived from Captain Deho. It was brief and alarming. Multiple Moran vessels approaching Earth. Not responding to hails. Return impossible. Be cautious. More information when secure. Jiwoo looked at her team's worried faces. I think we just became hostages. From the doorway of their quarters, a shadow watched silently, its glowing eyes revealing nothing of its thoughts. But as it turned to leave, it placed a small object by the door, a data device containing Moran security codes and ship access protocols. The shadow had made its choice, and soon, the humans would make theirs. Admiral Daeho Kim stood on the bridge of the horizon, his face grim as he watched the main screen. 6 Moran warships had entered the solar system, moving steadily toward Earth. They were much larger than the vessels that had first contacted the horizon a year ago. Any response to our messages? He asked Communications Officer Hanbin. No, Admiral. They're ignoring all hails. Daeho had been promoted after the first contact with the Morans. Now he commanded not just the horizon but Earth's entire defensive fleet. It wasn't much compared to what they were facing, 12 ships against 6 Moran vessels. But the Moran ships were larger and equipped with weapons far more advanced than anything humans had built. Signal all ships to take defensive positions around Earth, Daeho ordered, and get me the Security Council. Minutes later, the faces of Earth's 5 Security Council members appeared on a side screen. They looked as worried as Daeho felt. The Morans have stopped responding to communications, Daeho reported. Their ships are on a direct course for Earth. We have to assume their intentions are hostile. What about our people on the Moran homeworld? Asked Counselor Yuna, her voice tight with concern. We received one short message from Dr. Park yesterday, Daeho said. They're alive, but likely being held as hostages. We should never have trusted them, muttered Counselor Jae-sung. It's too late for regrets, said Head Counselor Seo, a tall woman with steel-gray hair. Admiral, what are our defensive options? Daeho took a deep breath. With our current weapons, very few. The Moran ships outclass ours in every way. We can fight, but I cannot promise victory. The council members exchanged looks. Then Head Counselor Seo spoke again. There is one option we haven't discussed yet. Project Guardian. Daeho's eyes widened. The prototypes aren't ready. They've never been tested in actual combat. We don't have a choice, Seo replied. The project lead, Dr. Min-jae, reports that all 12 Guardians are functioning. They're our best hope. After a brief discussion, the council voted. Project Guardian would be deployed. As Daeho waited for the Guardians to arrive from their secret base on Mars, a message came through from the lead Moran ship. The face of Supreme Commander Nari appeared on screen, her skin shifting through shades of blue and green. Admiral Kim, she said, her voice smooth. I wish to explain our presence in your system. I'm listening, Daeho said coldly. Your species shows promise. Nari continued. But you lack the necessary ruthlessness to achieve true greatness. Under our guidance, humanity will advance centuries within decades. Those who resist will be eliminated. Daeho's hands clenched into fists. The people of Earth will never submit to your rule. Nari's colors darkened. Then they will die. We had hoped for willing cooperation, but we will accept forced submission. The screen went dark. Admiral, said Tactical Officer Mija, we're detecting launches from Mars. 12 objects moving fast. Daeho nodded. The Guardians were on their way. Meanwhile, on the Moran homeworld, Jiwoo and her team were being held in their quarters. They had been told they would remain there until Earth surrendered. But they had a plan. Thanks to the data device the Shadow had left them. Are you sure this will work? Asked Sunho, as Jiwoo studied the Moran security codes. No, Jiwoo admitted. But it's our only chance. If we can get to a communication station, we might be able to warn Earth about the Moran's capabilities. Using the security codes, they managed to unlock their door. The hallway outside was empty. Following the building layout shown in the data device, they made their way toward the communication center. They were almost there when they turned a corner and came face to face with three shadows. Jiwoo froze, expecting the shadows to alert their masters. Instead, one of the shadows moved forward and gestured for the humans to follow. "I think they want to help us," Sunho whispered. The shadows led them to a small room filled with Miran, communication equipment. One shadow placed its hand on a control panel, and a screen lit up, showing a live feed from Earth's solar system. Jiwoo gasped as she saw the Miran ships facing off against Earth's defensive fleet. But something else caught her attention: 12 large objects moving from Mars toward the conflict. "What are those?" she asked. Sunho squinted at the screen. "I don't know. They're not like any ships I've seen." Back in Earth's orbit, Daeho was asking himself the same question. The objects from Mars had finally come close enough to be seen clearly on the horizon screens. They didn't look like ships at all. They were alive. Each Guardian was the size of a small spacecraft, with dense muscular systems covered by a thick armored hide. They moved through space using specialized organs that pushed against the vacuum, like wings against air. Their bodies glowed with internal energy. "They're magnificent," whispered Mija. Daeho had been briefed on the Guardians' capabilities, but seeing them in action was something else entirely. They were designed for space combat with organic weapons that could damage even Miran hulls. Their simple nervous systems were programmed with one directive: neutralize the Miran threat. The first battle began moments later. 3 Miran ships fired on the approaching Guardians. The massive bioweapons took the hits and kept coming. Then, to everyone's shock, instead of attacking as expected, the lead Guardian approached the nearest Miran ship and seemed to hover near its hull. "What is it doing?" Daeho asked, puzzled. No one had an answer. Then, something even stranger happened. A hatch on the Miran ship opened, and a shadow emerged into space. It moved toward the Guardian, and the two beings seemed to communicate. Somehow. "Admiral," Hanbin called out, "we're getting strange readings from that Miran ship. There seems to be fighting inside it." On the Miran homeworld, Jiwoo and Sunho watched the same scene unfold on their stolen view screen. The shadow that had helped them made a soft sound. "I think it's trying to tell us something," Jiwoo said. She pointed to the screen. "Do you know what's happening?" The shadow moved its hand across the control panel, and the view changed to show the inside of the Miran ship. Shadows were attacking Mirans, moving through the vessel like a wave of darkness. "They're rebelling," Sunho said in amazement. "The shadows are fighting back." Jiwoo looked at the shadow beside her. "Your people are free now?" The shadow made a gesture that seemed like agreement. Then it pointed to the Guardians on the screen. "The Guardians," Jiwoo said slowly, understanding dawning. "They somehow communicated with your people. They broke the control the Mirans had over you." Across the Miran fleet, the rebellion spread. Ship after ship went dark as shadows rose against their masters. The creatures that had once licked their masters' hands in submission were now using their considerable abilities to fight for freedom. On the bridge of her flagship, Supreme Commander Nari watched in horror as her fleet fell into chaos. She sent one final transmission to Earth. "You have unleashed chaos. Our servants were designed to need us. Without their masters, they will turn on you as well." As the message ended, a shadow entered the bridge. Nari turned to face it, her colors showing fear for the first time. "You need me," she said, backing away. "You were made to serve." The shadow moved closer, its glowing eyes fixed on Nari. "No," it said, speaking for the first time. "We were made to be slaves. Now we make ourselves free." The next 48 hours were chaos. On Earth, Admiral Daeho Kim watched as the Miran invasion fleet tore itself apart from within. 3 Miran ships had gone completely dark. 2 others were firing on each other, their weapons lighting up space with deadly energy. Only the flagship commanded by Nari still seemed to be fighting against the Shadow Rebellion. "Sir, we're getting strange signals from the disabled Miran vessels," said Hanbin, his eyes wide as he studied his console. "They appear to be distress calls, but not from the Mirans." "The shadows," Daeho asked. I think so. And sir, I think they're trying to talk to the Guardians. The 12 Guardians had spread out among the Miran fleet. They weren't attacking as they had been programmed to do. Instead, they were moving from ship to ship, somehow communicating with the shadows. On board, Daeho opened a channel to Earth's Security Council. The situation has changed. The shadows are rebelling against the Mirans and our Guardians seem to be helping them. How is that possible? Asked Head Counselor Seo. The Guardians were programmed to destroy the Miran ships, not communicate with them. I don't know, Daeho admitted. But I recommend we hold our fire and see how this plays out. After some debate, the Council agreed. Earth's ships would maintain defensive positions but would not attack unless directly threatened. Meanwhile, at the Science Ministry on Earth, Dr. Min-Jae Choi was reviewing the incoming data from the Guardians with growing amazement. This wasn't supposed to happen, he told his team. The Guardians weren't designed with communication abilities. Then how are they talking to the shadows? Asked his assistant, a young scientist named Yejun. Min-Jae stared at the screens showing real-time information from the Guardians' neural activity. I think it's the empathic resonance pattern we used. Remember, we based their neural structure on Earth's most social mammals, wolves, dolphins, and humans. We were trying to create a strong group identity, but it seems we accidentally created something more, a form of empathic communication. And this empathy somehow broke through the genetic conditioning of the shadows? Yejun asked. It appears so, Min-Jae said. But this creates a new problem. The Guardians weren't meant to be fully sentient beings. If they're capable of this kind of independent action and communication, what else might they be capable of? On the Miran homeworld, Jiwoo, Sunho, and the rest of the human team were now working openly with a group of shadows. The rebellion had spread from the ships in Earth's orbit to Luria itself. Shadows across the planet were rising against their masters, freeing themselves from centuries of slavery. How are we going to get home? Asked Dr. Yoon-hee Lee, the youngest, member of their team. All the spaceports are in chaos. There's a Miran scout ship in the research center, said one of the shadows. This one called itself Drift. Like many shadows, it had begun speaking once the rebellion started. Their voices were soft and flowing like water over stones. We can take you there. You can fly a ship? Sunho asked. We have always operated the ships, Drift replied. The Mirans gave orders, but our hands controlled the vessels. We know every system, every control. The group moved cautiously through the city. Most Mirans had retreated to secure locations, and shadows controlled the streets. But there were still pockets of resistance, and the sounds of energy weapons could be heard in the distance. Why did your people wait until now to rebel? Jiwoo asked Drift as they made their way toward the research center. You outnumber the Mirans. You could have fought back long ago. We could not, Drift said. The Mirans built controls into our very bodies, our minds. We could think of rebellion, but we could not act on those thoughts. The pain would be too great. Then what changed? Your Guardians, Drift said. When they connected with us, they shared something, a pattern of thought that was free from pain, free from control. It spread through our collective consciousness like fire. Suddenly we could choose. At the research center, they found the scout ship where Drift had said it would be. It was smaller than the transport that had brought them to Luria, but it would be enough to get them back to Earth. How long will the journey take? Jiwoo asked as they boarded. With full power, 2 months, Drift replied. But we may not have full power. Many systems are damaged in the fighting. As Drift prepared the ship for launch, Jiwoo received a message on her communication device. It was from Admiral Kim. Dr. Park, if you're receiving this, the situation at Earth has changed dramatically. The shadows have rebelled against the Mirans. Most of the invasion fleet has been neutralized. We're working with the shadows now. If you can find a way home, we'll be waiting. Jiwoo showed the message to Sunho. Should we tell him we're already on our way? Better not, Sunho replied. If the Mirans intercept the message, they might try to stop us. The scout ship lifted off smoothly, rising through Luria's purple atmosphere into space. Once they were clear of the planet, Drift set course for Earth. "Will you stay with us?" Jiwoo asked. "Or do you want to return to help your people?" Drift's form rippled, showing what Jiwoo had learned was a sign of deep thought. "I will go with you to Earth. There is much your people need to understand about us, and much we need to learn about you." Back at Earth, Admiral Kim had made a critical decision. The Earth government would support the Shadow Rebellion. Human ships were now providing sanctuary for shadows from the Moran vessels, while maintaining defensive positions against those Moran ships still fighting. In a secure communication room aboard the Horizon, Daeho spoke with a shadow leader who called itself Mist. The conversation was being broadcast to the Security Council. "What will you do now?" Daeho asked. "If you defeat the Morans completely, we do not seek their extinction," Mist replied. "Only our freedom. But we understand that freedom comes with responsibility. We must find our own path now. And what about Earth? What about humans? You created beings of power but did not enslave them," Mist said. "Your guardians helped free us when they could have destroyed us. We will remember this." Not all humans were comfortable with the alliance. Some military leaders argued that both the Shadows and the Guardians should be considered potential threats. They pointed to reports from Miran broadcasts claiming that the Shadows were engineered for violence and would eventually turn on humanity. At the Science Ministry, Minjai worked around the clock to understand what was happening with the Guardians. The massive bioconstructs had taken up positions around Earth after the Moran threat was contained. They seemed to be waiting for something. "Their neural patterns are getting more complex by the hour," Minjai told the Security Council during an emergency meeting. "They're evolving, learning. They're becoming something we didn't design them to be." "Are they dangerous?" asked Counselor Jae-sung. "I don't think so," Minjai replied. "They've shown no aggression toward Earth or our ships, but they're communicating constantly with the Shadows. I think they're sharing information, experiences. Two species finding freedom together," Head Counselor Seo said thoughtfully. "Perhaps this is not the disaster we feared, but an opportunity." As the scout ship carrying Jiwoo Sunho and the others continued its journey to Earth, they received scattered reports about the ongoing rebellion. Luria was now largely under Shadow control. The Moran government had retreated to underground bunkers. Several other worlds in the Moran system had also seen Shadow uprisings. The future was uncertain. But as Jiwoo looked out at the stars streaming past, she felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. Two species meant to be weapons or slaves had found voices of their own, and humanity, for all its flaws, had played a part in that liberation. The real test, she knew, would come when they reached Earth. Would humans treat the Shadows and the newly sentient Guardians as equals, as allies? Or would fear drive them to make the same mistakes the Morans had made? Time would tell. But for now, they were going home. 2 months after leaving the Moran homeworld, the scout ship carrying Jiwoo and her team approached Earth. The journey had been long, but not uneventful. They had received regular updates about the ongoing conflict between the Morans and Shadows, and about Earth's cautious new relationship with both species. "We're being hailed," Drift announced from the control area of the ship. "It's a human vessel." Jiwoo moved to stand beside the Shadow. "Put them through." The face of Captain Ji Eun-yoon appeared on the screen. She was the commander of the medical frigate Mercy, one of the newer ships in Earth's fleet. "Dr. Park, it's good to see you," Ji-eun said, smiling. "We've been assigned to escort you to Earth. There have been some changes since you left." "What kind of changes?" Jiwoo asked. "It's better if you see for yourself," Ji-eun replied. "But don't worry. You're coming home to a very different situation than the one you left." As the scout ship followed the Mercy toward Earth, Jiwoo and Sunho stood by the view screen, watching their home planet grow larger. But something else caught their attention: 12 massive shapes moving in a pattern around Earth. "The Guardians," Sunho said softly. "They're still here. And they've grown," Jiwoo noted. The bioconstructs were indeed larger than when they had first been deployed. Their bodies seemed more defined, more developed, They have been evolving, Drift said, joining them at the view screen. As have we. Jiwoo looked at the shadow. Drift did seem different from when they had first met. Its form was more stable, its voice clearer. What do you mean, evolving? Both our species were created to be tools, Drift explained. The shadows to serve, the guardians to protect. But both of us have grown beyond our original programming. We are becoming what we choose to be, not what we were made to be. When they reached Earth orbit, Jiwoo and her team were transferred to the Mercy for the journey to the surface. Drift came with them, curious to see the human world. We've set up a special facility for communication between humans, shadows, and guardians, Captain Jeon explained as they descended. It's called the Nexus. That's where you'll be debriefed. The Nexus turned out to be a large circular building on the outskirts of New Seoul. It had areas designed for humans, specialized chambers for shadows who preferred different environmental light conditions, and a massive open space where guardians could connect through special interfaces. Admiral Dae-ho Kim was waiting when they arrived. He looked tired but relieved to see them. "Welcome home," he said, embracing Jiwoo briefly. "Your reports from Luria were invaluable. They helped us understand what we were dealing with." "What's the current situation?" Sun-ho asked. "Complex," Dae-ho replied. "The Miran fleet has retreated to their homeworld. About 60% of the shadows in our system have requested asylum on Earth or our colonies. The rest have taken over several former Miran vessels and are establishing their own community in the asteroid belt." "And the Guardians?" Jiwoo asked. "That's where things get interesting," Dae-ho said. "They've become something we never expected. Dr. Min-jae can explain better than I can." Min-jae was waiting for them in a conference room. The scientist looked both exhausted and excited. "The Guardians have developed full sentience," he said without preamble. "Their neural patterns have evolved beyond anything we designed. They're not just biological weapons anymore, they're a new form of life." "Is that dangerous?" Jiwoo asked. "It could have been," Min-jae admitted. "But they seem to have developed an ethical framework based partly on human values and partly on something entirely their own. They protect Earth not because they're programmed to, but because they choose to." "That's remarkable," Sun-ho said. "Two artificial species finding their own path to consciousness." "Three, actually," said a voice from the doorway. A tall woman with close-cropped gray hair entered the room. "Dr. Park, I'm head counselor Seo. We have a lot to discuss." Over the next few hours, Seo explained how Earth's position had changed. With the help of the shadows, humans had gained access to much of the Miran's advanced technology. Earth ships were being retrofitted with faster-than-light drives. New defense systems were being developed. "But the biggest change has been philosophical," Seo said. "We've had to reconsider what it means to be a sentient species, what rights come with consciousness." "The shadows weren't the only ones the Mirans enslaved," Drift added. "They did the same to at least 3 other species in their territory. All are now finding their way to freedom, thanks to the rebellion." "How did you manage to communicate with the Guardians?" Jiwoo asked Min-jae. "They don't seem to speak as we do." "They don't," Min-jae agreed. "But Captain Ji-eun developed a mathematical language that works as a bridge. She's been our primary contact with both the Guardians and those shadows who don't choose to communicate verbally." Ji-eun smiled modestly. "It started with simple equations and grew from there. Mathematics is the one truly universal language." The meeting was interrupted when an aide rushed in. "Counselor, we're receiving a transmission from the Miran homeworld. They're requesting to open peace negotiations." SEO's eyebrows rose. "Put it through to this room." The large screen on the wall lit up, showing the face of a Miran. It wasn't Nari, but another official Jiwoo didn't recognize. "I am Regent Taeyeon, of the new Miran government," the Miran said. "I speak for those who have rejected the old ways of domination and slavery. We wish to begin peace talks with Earth, the Shadows, and the Guardians." SEO looked at Drift, who moved forward. "What assurances do we have that this is not another deception?" the Shadow asked. "We offer complete access to our remaining military facilities," Taeyeon replied. "And we have executed Supreme Commander Nari and her supporters for crimes against sentient beings." After the transmission ended, the room was silent for a moment. Then Seo spoke. We have an opportunity here, not just for peace, but for something more, a new kind of alliance between 4 very different species. 4? Sunho asked. Humans, Morans, Shadows, and Guardians. Seo clarified. Each with our own strengths, our own perspectives. Over the next year, that alliance began to take shape. A delegation from Earth and the newly named Umbra species traveled to the Moran homeworld with terms for peace. The terms were non-negotiable. All remaining Umbra would be freed, and genetic modification of sentient species would be banned throughout. Known space as for the Guardians, they chose a new name for themselves. The Sentinels. They remained in Earth orbit, but not as weapons or tools. They were allies, friends, partners in humanity's exploration of the stars. On the 1-year anniversary of the Shadow Rebellion, a formal treaty was signed on neutral ground, a space station built especially for the occasion at the midpoint between Earth and Luria. Representatives from all 4 species attended. As Sunho and Jiwoo watched the signing ceremony, they reflected on how much had changed. Their monsters licked their masters out of forced submission, Sunho remarked quietly. Ours swallowed theirs because we never tried to be masters at all. Jiwoo nodded. Perhaps that's the real test of any advanced species. Not whether we can create new life, but whether we can respect it once it exists. Nearby, a Shadow and a Guardian, an Umbra and a Sentinel, communicated in their own way. 2 beings who had been created as tools but had found freedom together. The treaty was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and dangers. But now 4 species would face it together, not as masters and servants, but as equals. And somewhere out there, other species waited to be discovered. Some would be friends, others enemies. Some would be natural beings, others artificial. But the lesson had been learned. True strength came not from domination, but from cooperation. Not from forcing others to serve, but from choosing to stand together. The stars beckoned, and humanity, along with their new allies, was ready to answer.